Assalamu alaikum, students. Here we are with a new with a lecture on a new topic that is about the kinds of essays which we have already studied in our previous classes. So, we have talked about the kinds of essays or types of essays in which narrative and descriptive essay writing we have already done. So today we are going to talk about how to write a compare contrast essay. So let's get started. The purpose and the learning objectives of today's session are that we will determine the purpose and the structure of comparison and contrast in writing, and as well as explain organizational methods used when comparing and contrasting, and as well as understand how to write a compare and contrast essay. Right, so this is basically the objective of today's lecture. Okay, so when it comes to when we talk about that how and when to write a compare and contrast essay, so you see that comparison in writing basically discusses elements that are similar, and while contrast in writing, it discusses the elements that are different. So you see that when we are comparing the similarities and differences of particular things, it is called comparing and contrasting. And when you are asked and required to write an essay on it, so this is called compare and contrast essay. And what do you do basically in it? That you analyze two subjects by comparing them or contrasting them, or you do both. Okay, so the key, when we say that what are the main, what is the basis of writing a compare and contrast essay and how to compare the things. So the two things to be compared must have enough in common to justify the comparison. Like for example, the key to a good compare and contrast essay is to choose two or more subjects that connect in a meaningful way. The purpose of conducting the comparison or contrast is not to state the obvious, but rather to illuminate subtle differences or unexpected similarities. So you see that sometimes what happens that you may not be, sometimes when you are writing, you have to pay the attention to the details, that you have to see, very minutely and very deeply to identify the comparison, the similarities and differences. Okay, for example, if you wanted to focus on contrasting two subjects, you would not pick apples and oranges. I mean, you see that you have to first see that the things which you are comparing are the two things and the two objects. What are they, from the same category or not? Like you cannot compare, apples and oranges. Rather, you might choose to compare and contrast two types of oranges or two types of apples to highlight their subtle differences. For example, red delicious apples are sweet, while Granny Smiths are tart and acidic. So drawing distinction between elements in a similar category will increase the audience's understanding or the reader's understanding of that category, which is the purpose of the compare and contrast essay. And similarly, to focus on comparison, choose two subjects that seem at first to be unrelated. For a comparison essay, you would not choose two apples or two oranges because they share so many of the same properties already. Rather, you might try to compare how apples and oranges are quite similar. The more divergent the topic subjects initially seem, the more interesting a comparison essay will look like. All right. So in this slide, you will see that we are talking about how to prepare the points of discussion for for the similarities and differences. This is the chart which you can see that has the similarities and differences of Bollywood and Hollywood movies. But imagine you have been given a task to write the difference, compare, and write the differences and similarities and compare Bollywood and Hollywood movies. So you can compare in two ways. You can discuss similarities and you can also discuss the differences. So it is good to make a chart, all right, or you know uh, the chart, all right, in which one side you can write the similarities and other side you can write the broad and the bold points of differences that will help you to construct your full sentences. Okay, so when you are sitting to write a compare and contrast essay, the first thing you need to do is to collect your points. So determine your emphasis on similarities and differences both. All right, like for example, that as you can see in the chart that when we are comparing Bollywood and Hollywood movies, so we will first talk about it kinds like genre, what genre, what kind of you know Hollywood movies are and what genre Hollywood movies are, whether these are the science fiction and action movies or horror movies or what more. Then you will determine the major focus of your paper or your essay and make sure you treat the same or the similar elements for each subject you will discuss. So when you are comparing the kinds, you will have to compare and you will have to share the similarities or the differences of the kinds of a particular thing. All right. Another thing, like you will talk about the similarities, like the promotion. They both, you know, pay a lot of attention to promotion. All right. The differences is like big budget. Maybe the Bollywood movies are not investing, like the Hollywood movies. They have their budget is big, and you can say that in the differences subject, so you can talk about that their subjects are different, the Hollywood movies and Bollywood movie subject are different, and both use maybe the latest technology, so this is one of the similarities. And the popularities, time duration, all right, so time duration may be different, that maybe Bollywood movies are or the Hollywood movies are longer than Bollywood movies, or Bollywood movies are longer than Hollywood movies, all right, in terms of time duration. So this is how you have to first of all note down the important points that you are going to mention. All right. So in the comparison, when you're writing, compare and contrast essay, so it's also very important that you use the transition words. Transition words play an important role and the vital role to give, to organize your points, your similarities and the differences. All right, they bring more coherency and connectivity to your essay. For example, that when you are writing uh, compare and contrast essay, so the transition words, they established a comparison or contrast between one thing and another. And these are very useful and quite widely used in any form of writing. So the overall effect that comparing expressions and contrast expressions produce is that they make your essays flow much better. They bring, as I mentioned earlier, the connectivity and coherency. By using them, you will ensure that each and every point you introduce in the piece has a context in relation to each other. You can see that when you are, what are the comparison words? So there are some words like, they are the similarity transition words, as you can see on the left hand side, or transition words for explaining what two things have in common. There are a few examples like, in the similar, in the same way, likewise, similarly, by the same token. So these are the transition words that we use to talk about the similarities. All right. So, for example, if you are describing the likeness between the speeds of two different subspecies of lions, so you could word it like subspecies A can reach speeds up to 40 minutes per hour. Sorry, 40. All right. Similarly, subspecies B can achieve a maximum 35. Okay, meter per hour, or yes, meter per hour. All right. So this is like, you are comparing and the similarity. Uh, okay. So they can be used to link multiple traits or features to one entity. For instance, if you want to discuss the multiple benefits of exercise but don't want your sentences to be too lengthy, so you could use transition words like in addition and furthermore to list more benefits in a new sentence. So maybe we can say a few examples like keeping your tires properly inflated can help prevent random blowouts on the road. In addition, it will also mean that you don't have to spend money as often to replace them. Okay, or another example that learning to play instruments as a family will help you become much closer with each other. On the top of that, you'll have a really great time. All right. So when you want to talk about the multiple traits of and the multiple characteristics of something, then you can also use a transition words like furthermore, in addition to, moreover. These words you can use. Okay, now let's talk about the contrast transitions. So, whatever would we do without transitions, signifying contrast? There would be no way to use articulate our polar or different and the conflicting ideas without these contrasting transitions. So there are some examples like you can see that in contrast, although, but, even though, however, these are the contrasting, words. And like for example, that she is intelligent, however, she is very straightforward. All right, she is intelligent, however, although she is intelligent, she is straightforward. So we are here telling you the two things that one is in the contrast, two qualities in contrast, that she is intelligent, although she is intelligent, she is rude or she is straightforward, something like that. Right, so another example can be like people who play basketball are generally quite tall. In contrast, gymnasts and jockeys are typically short. Okay, on one hand, a career in the military earns won a lot of respect from everywhere. On the other hand, soldiers tend to experience severe depression fairly common. So, you see that how we are writing two sentences in contrast of each other. Now, as we have already discussed in the previous lecture about the parts of essay, that when we talk about introduction, so introduction has three parts: hook, references, and thesis statement. So we will follow the same pattern and the same writing pattern of an essay, that is like thesis statement, and it has body paragraphs and then conclusion. So when you are writing about when you are writing a compare and contrast essay, you will first have to write a thesis statement. Like, the compare and contrast essay also follow and start with a thesis that clearly states the two subjects that are to be compared or contrasted or both, and the reason for doing so. The thesis would learn more toward comparing, contrasting, or both. Lean towards, sorry, the thesis should lean more towards comparing, contrasting, or both. And remember, the point of comparing and contrasting is to provide useful knowledge to the reader. So just this is an example, as you can see on the screen, that we are comparing two things: organic vegetables and conventionally, like grown naturally and conventionally. So this can be a thesis or statement to write a compare and contrast essay, that organic vegetables may cost more than those that are conventionally grown. But when put to the test, they are definitely worth every extra penny, right? So here, the status or the thesis statement sets up the two subjects to be compared and contrasted: organic versus conventional vegetables. And it makes a claim about the results that might prove useful to the reader. You may organize, compare, and contrast essays in, we will also talk about the structure of an essay, that how to organize, compare, and contrast essay. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so the body of the essay can be organized in one of the two ways. The first one is subject, by subject or by individual points, or the other one is like, the point by point. So let's see. So when you are writing an essay and organizing the body of an essay, you can follow one of these two techniques. One is subject by subject. That is like, the organizing strategy that you choose will depend on, as always, your audience and your purpose. So you may also consider your particular approach to the subject as well as the nature of the subjects themselves. Some subjects might better lend themselves to one structure or the other. Make sure to use comparison and contrast phrases to cue the reader to the ways in which you are analyzing the relationship between the subjects. Okay, so for example, that when you are arranging the points in the logical order, you have to keep these things in mind, like write a separate essay about each subject, but you discuss the same points for both subjects and use basis for comparison to guide your selection of the points. Arrange points in logical order, usually order of importance, and it's good for short and uncomplicated. Okay, so when you are writing an essay, you see that introduction definitely, which has hook, references, and thesis statement. So in the first paragraph of an essay, compare and contrast, you have written your thesis statement. Then in the body paragraph, you will write the similarities and differences and then conclusion. So this is the essay structure and the essay organization. Okay, when you are writing point by point, so this is good for longer and more complex papers. So you make a point about one subject and then follow it with a comparable point about the other subject. Okay, then altering the pattern. You're mentioning, the one contrasting point, and then and contrasting it and stating the difference with the other subjects. All right, so be careful not to fall into a monotonous back and forth movement between the points. And to avoid this, you can use, the sentence structure as you move from point to point, and as well as transition words that help you in maintaining the coherency and connectivity. All right. So in the second, like when you are doing point by point, so you will first write definitely the introduction, then similarity one, then similarity two, then you will use the transition words, then difference one and difference two, and conclusion. All right. Like for example, this is just an example essay in front of you. So as we talked about, if you are writing an essay to compare and contrast essay about Hollywood and Bollywood movies. So this is one of the greatest example in front of you to make you understand that this is the introduction. The first paragraph is an introduction. Then the second one is the specific things that will be, the first one is introduce, that you are writing the general information. Then the specific things that will be compared, and it also gives the writer's opinion about the topic. So this first paragraph, that entertainment is perhaps deemed a necessary psychological need for humans. Now, Bollywood and Hollywood movies are two most popular sources of entertainment. However, many people watch Hollywood movies, although there are many people like to watch Bollywood movies as a source of entertainment. And in this essay, I will write about the similarities and differences between Bollywood and Hollywood movies. Now, introduce the similarities. Like there are some imperative similarities between Bollywood and Hollywood movies. Firstly, both of them make all kinds of movies such as action, romance, drama, and comedy. And secondly, both Hollywood and Bollywood movies highly promote their films and stars. Another similarity is that both of them use the latest technology in the movies world, and moreover, these are very popular around the world. So you see the transition words, however, moreover, these are the transition words. They are connecting the sentences, plus, firstly, secondly, next, after that. These also give a very smooth transition to your sentences and your paragraph. Then another slide that has the differences. When you are writing the differences, so you will mention all the differences that you first jotted down before writing the essay. There is another stage, you all know that is pre-writing and discussing the points and noting them down. So when you, the first very few first slides, I showed you that When you are writing, you should write your points first before writing it into sentences. So you are going to write all the points that you have selected to show the differences, you will write into sentences. And then this is the conclusion. Okay. So here, this is the conclusion, and here we end the session. And I will make another video for the assignments. Thank you.